The sound of a single Welsh name once forced English commanders to reinforce castle walls before a battle had even begun. It wasn't magic, and it wasn't superstition. It was reputation earned through centuries of resistance. Across the mountains, forests, and valleys of medieval Wales, certain leaders became so feared that their very names spread panic through English border towns. Chroniclers recorded them. Kings cursed them. Soldiers remembered them. Even after those warriors disappeared into history, their names survived, passed from generation to generation until many became the family names still found across Wales today. But how did these names become symbols of defiance? Why did some inspire loyalty while others struck fear into one of Europe's most powerful kingdoms? The answers lie in a turbulent world where every valley could become a battlefield, every castle a target, and every Welsh prince a potential threat to the English crown. To understand these names, we must first step into a Britain that looked nothing like the one we know today. During the early Middle Ages, Wales was not a single united nation. Instead, it consisted of several independent kingdoms, including Gwynedd, Powys, Deheubarth, Morgannwg, and Gwent. Each possessed its own rulers, traditions, alliances, and rivalries. Geography became Wales' greatest ally. Towering mountains, dense forests, swift rivers, and narrow valleys created natural defenses that frustrated invading armies for centuries. English kings often believed they had conquered Wales, only to discover that victory in one region meant little when resistance erupted somewhere else. The landscape itself fought beside the Welsh. Small, mobile war bands knew every mountain pass and hidden trail, allowing them to strike quickly before disappearing into terrain that foreign armies struggled to navigate. That advantage transformed ordinary leaders into legends. Unlike England, where Norman influence gradually reshaped aristocratic society after 1066, Wales preserved many older Celtic traditions. Leadership depended not only upon inheritance but also upon military ability, personal loyalty, and political skill. Welsh princes ruled through networks of kinship supported by noble families whose allegiance could determine the fate of entire kingdoms. A respected name carried enormous weight. It represented courage, ancestry, honor, and proven leadership. Long before permanent surnames became common, Welsh naming customs relied heavily upon patronymics. A man identified himself as the son of his father using the word ap, meaning son of. Rhys ap Gruffydd literally meant Rhys, son of Gruffydd. Over generations, many of these patronymics gradually evolved into modern surnames, preserving some of medieval Wales' most famous names for centuries after the original rulers had vanished. One of the earliest names to strike fear into medieval England was Gruffydd. Few names appear more frequently in Welsh royal history. Derived from the ancient Welsh name Gruffydd, it became synonymous with powerful rulers who refused to submit to outside control. The most famous bearer was Gruffydd ap Llywelyn, the only ruler ever to unite nearly all of Wales under one crown. During the 11th century, while England struggled with internal political turmoil, Gruffydd expanded his authority across the Welsh kingdoms with remarkable speed. His victories transformed him from a regional prince into one of Britain's most formidable rulers. English nobles living along the borders soon discovered that defending isolated castles against his forces required enormous resources. Gruffydd understood the landscape better than any invading army. His warriors struck supply lines, ambushed patrols, and vanished before larger forces could organize an effective response. Even powerful English earls found themselves unable to secure lasting victories against him. His growing influence eventually became so concerning that English politics shifted in response. King Edward the Confessor and powerful English nobles sought alliances designed specifically to contain Welsh expansion. Few Welsh leaders ever forced England to pay such close attention. The name Gruffydd became associated with strength, determination, and national unity. Historians still regard him as one of the greatest military leaders Wales ever produced. But his story also carries tragedy. In 1063, political betrayal weakened his position, leading to his death. Although his kingdom fragmented afterward, his reputation survived. Today, surnames such as Griffith and Griffiths preserve echoes of that extraordinary ruler. Yet Gruffydd's legacy was only the beginning. Another name that haunted English kings was Llywelyn. For many Welsh people, no medieval name symbolizes independence more completely. The most celebrated bearer was Llywelyn ap Iorwerth, remembered as Llywelyn the Great. Rising to power during the late 12th century, he inherited a divided Wales threatened by powerful Norman lords and ambitious English monarchs. Through diplomacy, carefully chosen marriages, military campaigns, and remarkable political skill, Llywelyn gradually restored Welsh strength. Rather than relying solely on warfare, he built alliances with neighboring rulers while exploiting divisions within England itself. His greatest weapon often proved to be patience. King John of England underestimated him repeatedly. Their rivalry eventually erupted into open conflict, forcing John to invade Wales. Yet difficult terrain, determined Welsh resistance, and collapsing supply lines prevented the English king from achieving lasting success. Instead, negotiations often favored Llywelyn, strengthening his position even further. Welsh poets celebrated him as the rightful protector of the nation, while English chroniclers reluctantly acknowledged his extraordinary abilities. His influence extended far beyond the battlefield. Trade increased. Laws were strengthened. Religious institutions received royal support. Wales experienced one of its most stable and prosperous periods under his leadership. Historians rarely mention how close Llywelyn came to establishing a permanently united Welsh state capable of surviving English pressure. The opportunity was real, though history ultimately chose another path. Even centuries later, the name Llywelyn continued inspiring Welsh resistance whenever foreign domination seemed inevitable. The most fascinating detail is still ahead. If Llywelyn the Great built Welsh unity, his grandson attempted to preserve it against impossible odds. That grandson carried the same unforgettable name. Llywelyn ap Gruffydd, often called Llywelyn the Last, inherited a kingdom facing the growing power of King Edward I. By the late 13th century, England possessed greater financial resources, larger armies, and increasingly sophisticated military organization. Edward also introduced a revolutionary strategy that permanently changed warfare in Wales. Instead of launching temporary invasions, he constructed massive stone castles at strategic locations including Carnarvon, Conwy, Harlech, and Beaumaris. These fortresses became permanent symbols of English authority. Yet even this overwhelming advantage failed to secure immediate victory. Llywelyn resisted through diplomacy, alliances, and determined military campaigns. His supporters believed Welsh independence still remained possible. For years they continued fighting despite impossible odds. In 1282, during one of the conflict's decisive campaigns, Llywelyn was killed near Builth Wells. His death marked a turning point in British history. Independent Welsh rule effectively ended, and Edward accelerated his conquest of the remaining territories. But something remarkable happened afterward. The man disappeared, yet the name refused to die. Throughout later centuries, parents continued naming sons Llywelyn as an act of cultural memory and quiet resistance. A defeated prince became an immortal symbol. English kings had won the war, but they could never erase the identity he represented. What happened next completely changed the relationship between England and Wales. Conquest did not eliminate Welsh culture. It transformed the struggle. Military resistance continued in different forms, supported by families who refused to forget the leaders whose names had once united an entire nation. Some of the greatest stories are still waiting ahead, because the next Welsh names would inspire rebellions powerful enough to shake the English crown once again. The English crown believed that conquering Wales would silence its greatest leaders forever. Instead, their names became even more powerful. They passed from battlefield songs into family histories, from royal courts into ordinary villages, and from medieval chronicles into the surnames carried by thousands of people today. Every generation remembered another hero, another rebellion, another prince who refused to surrender. Among those unforgettable names, none inspired hope more than Owain. Few figures occupy a greater place in Welsh history than Owain Glyndŵr. By the beginning of the 15th century, Wales had been under English rule for more than a century. Many believed Welsh independence was finished forever. Then, in 1400, Owain Glyndŵr proved them wrong. A respected nobleman with strong ancestral ties to the ancient princes of Powys, Owain launched a rebellion that rapidly spread across the country. At first, English officials dismissed the uprising as a local disturbance. They could not have been more mistaken. Within months, castles fell, English settlements were attacked, and support for Glyndŵr continued growing. Entire communities rallied behind his cause because they saw him not merely as a rebel but as the rightful Prince of Wales. His victories shocked King Henry IV, who suddenly faced one of the greatest threats of his reign. English armies marched repeatedly into Wales only to encounter familiar problems. The mountains concealed Welsh fighters. Supply lines stretched dangerously thin. Weather destroyed equipment. Local knowledge repeatedly defeated superior numbers. Glyndŵr mastered guerrilla warfare centuries before the term existed. His soldiers struck quickly, disappeared into the landscape, and forced the English to fight on unfamiliar ground. Historians rarely mention just how close his rebellion came to succeeding. In 1404, Owain held a parliament at Maredudd, where he was formally crowned Prince of Wales. He proposed creating Welsh universities, strengthening the Welsh Church, and building an independent government. For a brief moment, an independent Welsh nation seemed possible once again. Although the rebellion eventually faded after years of relentless warfare, Glyndŵr himself was never captured. He simply disappeared from history. His mysterious fate inspired legends suggesting he would one day return when Wales needed him most. The name Owain became more than personal identity. It became a promise that Welsh resistance could never truly be defeated. Another name deeply feared by English commanders was Rhys. Throughout Welsh history, numerous princes and military leaders carried the name, but Rhys ap Gruffydd, often known as the Lord Rhys, transformed it into one of medieval Britain's most respected names. During the 12th century, Rhys gradually restored the power of Deheubarth after years of Norman expansion. Unlike rulers who relied solely upon military force, Rhys combined diplomacy with strategic warfare. He negotiated when necessary, fought when required, and patiently rebuilt his kingdom piece by piece. English rulers soon discovered that defeating him on one battlefield accomplished very little. His authority rested upon loyal supporters who respected both his leadership and his judgment. The Lord Rhys also became a remarkable patron of Welsh culture. Under his rule, poetry, music, and literature flourished alongside military strength. He sponsored one of the earliest recorded national festivals celebrating Welsh poets and musicians, laying foundations for traditions that continue today through the National Eisteddfod. This cultural leadership proved almost as influential as his military achievements. Nations survive not only through victories in battle but also through the preservation of language, memory, and identity. The surname Price ultimately evolved from the patronymic ap Rhys, preserving the memory of one of medieval Wales' greatest rulers. The real surprise came centuries later. Millions of people carrying the surname Price have little idea that their family name originated from one of Wales' most admired princes. History often hides its greatest stories inside the names we use every day. Another powerful Welsh name is Madog. While several rulers bore the name, Madog ap Maredudd became one of the last major princes of Powys before political divisions weakened the kingdom. He ruled during a period when Norman influence steadily expanded across the Welsh borderlands. Unlike some neighboring rulers, Madog balanced military strength with political compromise whenever necessary. His kingdom remained one of Wales' most stable territories during an era of constant uncertainty. Yet another legend connected to the name would eventually spread far beyond Britain. According to later Welsh tradition, Prince Madog sailed west across the Atlantic during the 12th century, centuries before Christopher Columbus reached the Americas. Modern historians find no reliable evidence supporting the story, and it remains a fascinating legend rather than established history. Even so, the tale became enormously popular during later centuries because it reflected Wales' deep tradition of exploration and imagination. Separating myth from historical fact allows us to appreciate both without confusing one for the other. The historical Madog remains important because he represents the difficult choices Welsh rulers faced while defending their independence against increasingly powerful neighbors. The most fascinating detail is still ahead. Some names terrified England not because they belonged to kings but because they belonged to families whose loyalty never wavered. The name Maredudd appears repeatedly throughout medieval Welsh genealogy. Princes, nobles, and military commanders carried it across multiple kingdoms. Derived from ancient Welsh tradition, the name became associated with respected leadership during centuries of political instability. Men named Maredudd often found themselves negotiating alliances, leading armies, or defending territories threatened by Norman expansion. Their influence reached beyond individual battles because they helped preserve the political structures that allowed Welsh kingdoms to survive far longer than many expected. Modern surnames such as Maredudd preserve that remarkable legacy. Although pronunciation changed over time, the connection to medieval Wales remains unmistakable. Historians increasingly recognize that Wales' greatest strength was not always found in one extraordinary ruler but in generations of capable leaders who maintained resistance despite overwhelming pressure. That continuity explains why English victories often proved temporary. Every defeated prince seemed to be replaced by another equally determined leader. As the struggle continued, English monarchs gradually realized that conquering Wales required far more than military success. They needed permanent castles, new administrative systems, loyal settlers, and enormous financial resources simply to maintain control. Few regions demanded so much effort for so many centuries. Every campaign reminded England that Welsh resistance could never be measured solely by the size of an army. It lived inside families, communities, traditions, and names that refused to disappear. Yet the final names reveal an even greater truth. Some became symbols not only of military resistance but of national identity itself, leaving a legacy that continues to shape Wales more than 700 years after the last independent prince fell. As English castles spread across the Welsh landscape, it appeared that the long struggle for independence had finally reached its end. Stone walls rose above conquered valleys, royal officials collected taxes in the king's name, and English law gradually expanded into territories that had once answered only to Welsh princes. Yet beneath this new order, something refused to disappear. The language survived. The poetry survived. The traditions survived. Most importantly, the names survived. They carried the memory of resistance long after the battles themselves had faded into history. One of the most enduring names was Cadwaladr. Although it reaches back to the early medieval period, long before the Norman conquest, Cadwaladr became one of the most powerful symbols of Welsh identity. Cadwaladr ap Cadwallon was remembered as one of the last great kings of the Britons, and over the centuries his story grew into legend. Medieval Welsh writers believed that a descendant of Cadwaladr would one day restore Britain to its native rulers. Whether viewed as history or prophecy, the legend inspired generations who lived under foreign rule. English kings understood the importance of symbols, and they recognized that names connected to ancient Welsh royalty could inspire dangerous political movements. The famous Red Dragon, now proudly displayed on the Welsh flag, became closely associated with these old prophecies. Long before it represented modern Wales, it symbolized hope that Welsh identity would never be erased. The name Cadwaladr therefore represented far more than one historical king. It embodied the dream that the spirit of Wales would survive regardless of who controlled its castles. Another unforgettable name is Caradog, known to the Romans as Caratacus. Although he lived nearly 1,000 years before the medieval conflicts with England, his legacy echoed throughout Welsh history. Caradog led one of the earliest and most determined British resistances against Roman invasion during the 1st century AD. After years of fighting, he was captured and taken to Rome, where many expected his execution. Instead, according to Roman historians, Caradog delivered such a courageous speech before Emperor Claudius that his life was spared. His dignity impressed even the empire that had defeated him. Medieval Welsh chroniclers proudly preserved his story, presenting him as proof that Welsh courage stretched back to antiquity itself. By the Middle Ages, leaders fighting English expansion saw themselves as heirs to the same tradition of resistance. The name Caradog reminded Wales that powerful empires could conquer land, but they could never conquer the spirit of a determined people. Historians rarely mention how important these ancient stories became during later centuries. They offered every new generation examples of courage when hope seemed impossible. The real surprise came after military resistance had largely ended. The battle shifted from the battlefield to culture itself. Welsh families continued giving their children the names of ancient princes, heroes, and saints even when English influence dominated politics. Every birth became a quiet act of remembrance. Every familiar name carried centuries of history into the future. Among these enduring names was Hywel, forever linked with Hywel Dda, or Hywel the Good. Unlike many rulers remembered primarily for warfare, Hywel earned lasting respect through law. During the 10th century, he brought together legal traditions from across Wales and created one of medieval Europe's most sophisticated law codes. His laws protected property rights, recognized the importance of compensation over revenge in many disputes, and even granted women certain legal protections that were uncommon elsewhere in Europe at the time. While neighboring kingdoms often relied upon harsh punishment, Hywel's legal system emphasized fairness, negotiation, and practical justice. For centuries, Welsh courts continued applying many of these principles despite increasing English pressure. His name became associated not with fear alone but with wisdom and stable government. That reputation strengthened Welsh identity just as effectively as military victories. A nation survives through laws as much as through battles. The most fascinating detail is still ahead. Many people assume England and Wales share a simple history of conqueror and conquered. The truth is far more complex. Welsh soldiers later fought alongside English armies in France during the 100 Years' War. Welsh nobles served English kings while still preserving their own traditions. Welsh longbowmen became some of the finest soldiers in medieval Europe, helping secure famous English victories. Yet even as political realities changed, ancient Welsh names continued reminding families where they came from. Identity adapted without disappearing. That remarkable balance explains why Wales preserved its unique language and culture while many other medieval societies gradually lost theirs. Modern surnames such as Gruffydd, Griffiths, Price, Maredudd, Powell, Bowen, Bevan, Evans, Jones, and Williams all reflect the old Welsh patronymic tradition in different ways. Many originated from famous medieval names carried by princes, warriors, nobles, and respected community leaders. Although spelling changed over the centuries, their historical roots remain deeply connected to the story of Wales. They remind us that history is not preserved only inside castles, museums, or ancient manuscripts. Sometimes it survives in ordinary conversations whenever someone introduces themselves by a family name passed down across generations. Looking back across nearly 1,000 years, it becomes clear why these names once terrified medieval England. It was never because the names themselves possessed any mystical power. They represented leaders who understood their homeland better than any invading army. They inspired loyalty that no occupation could completely destroy. They united scattered kingdoms against overwhelming odds. Most importantly, they proved that Wales would continue resisting long after individual rulers had fallen. Kings died. Castles changed hands. Armies marched away. But the names endured. They became living monuments to courage, resilience, and an identity that refused to disappear. Even today, hearing names like Gruffydd, Llywelyn, Owain, Rhys, Madog, Maredudd, Cadwaladr, Caradog, and Hywel is like hearing distant echoes from medieval Wales, where mountains sheltered princes, poets preserved history, and ordinary people carried extraordinary legacies into the future. The greatest victory these names ever achieved was not on the battlefield. It was surviving long enough for us to remember them centuries later. If your family name has a story worth discovering, subscribe for more forgotten history.